Welcome to Estate Planning Redefined with Nedbank Private Clients, where we are unpacking one of the most important yet often overlooked aspects of wealth management, estate planning. My name is Taryn, and today I'm joined by Hein, Klee, a Nedbank financial planning executive. Hey Hein, welcome.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about who you are, what brings you here today, and give us some context.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm based down in Cape Town. As you said, I head up the financial planning business for Nedbank. Our financial advisors are spread across the bank itself. So as a major bank, we obviously have various clients in our segments, from what we call consumer clients going into a branch, all the way to some of our investment bank clients. And what we specifically do around our business is to ensure that there's holistic advice in all aspects of the client. Not only you as the individual or you as the business, but they are interlinked between, especially when it comes to your estate, your will, succession, etc., etc. The topic we specifically are talking about today, I think, is in many cases misunderstood by clients. That's why I'm very glad that we're having this discussion, because I think this awareness goes far beyond just I need a will. You do need to understand the actual consequences of a will, and actually while you're still alive, that there are certain things that you can do while you're still alive, and that a will ultimately is your most important document, because there is a saying, you can't rule from the grave.
Yeah.
So that's a very, very important point.
So before we kick it off, let's unpack estate planning, what it actually means and what it actually involves, so that we're all on the same page.
I think before I answer that, in many cases people look at the word estate and they think I need a lot of money before I seek financial advice, before I even go into the complexities of drafting a will. But it actually comes down to ensuring that your wishes are captured and that it can be fulfilled. Just mentioned to you, you can't rule from the grave. If a granddaughter says to the executor, my grandmother's always said to me, I can get her jewelry. If it's not captured in the will, you can't fulfill the wish. I think what's also important, a will is not there only for when you die. So when it comes to estate planning, it also comes to a power of attorney. If I become medically disabled, what happens to my financial affairs while I might be in hospital, or I'm not in a position to actually make certain points around it. Many people also say to you, don't worry, I've got a will. It's been lying with my lawyer or with the bank. I haven't updated for 15 years because nothing has changed. Important to understand, the law also changes. So if you don't keep up to date with law changes, something that you might have done 10 years ago might not be applicable now if something does happen to you.
So what are some of the, in your experience, what are some of the biggest mistakes you've seen people make when it comes to estate planning?
Number one, not seeking advice. Number two, leaving it too late to think, I don't need the will. I'm not wealthy enough to have a will in place.
Like your estate needs to be established enough, and you don't have to wait
correct.
for
that. The other important one is where you have a married couple. And in many cases, the breadwinner, in many cases, hold the bulk of wealth. Now, herein lies the important part. Let's say you've got a couple that's married. They've got joint assets. Let's say the spouse passes away that's not the breadwinner. The breadwinning spouse will have to ensure that there's enough liquidity to settle the spouse's estate duty,
So, and
taxes,
debts, I'm assuming, that are with
all of those debts. So if you don't have enough liquidity, for example, to in a certain way unwind or settle the estate, you potentially might sit in situations where family homes have to be sold, because you actually have to satisfy the needs of the will, where, for example, the joint property has to be sold to create liquidity. People think life insurance is an expensive exercise. It becomes an extremely effective tool when it comes to estate planning. But again, the most important part that I started off with is seek the advice. Seek the advice early on, and don't just rely on one opinion. Ask around. It doesn't cost you anything to seek that advice. And I think it's ultimately something that you have to update at least every 2 to 3 years.
And I mean, a big part of estate planning and implications of it is tax. So when we're
Correct.
talking estate duty, capital tax, what are the things that people need to be aware of?
You can't avoid them. It's as simple as that. There are obviously guidelines within the Income Tax Act that one specifically can lower your estate duty as well as executive fees. I think the most important part is plan early. We always say to clients, if there's a life-changing event, baby, changing a job, buying a new house, taking out a new loan, for example. A lot of people don't realize that. So it's all life-changing events. Seek the advice of your advisor. Our advisors are equipped to go through various scenarios. Now, the most important thing that I think a lot of people in South Africa do not realize is they see the banker and they see the advisor, but they don't understand the expertise that sits behind the advisor. So if I take our private client business and even my business, we've got access to extremely well qualified fiduciary experts. For example, we also have quite a few people that want to leave a legacy and they go the philanthropy route. So they want a certain portion of their estate to go to non-profit organizations. So we structure all of those things now that to the extent that when it comes to estate duty, capital gains, etc., it actually lower your estate value, which means it can actually then to a certain extent lower your burden that your estate potentially can carry.
What do we need to know and what do families need to know in terms of preserving wealth for future generations when it comes to estate planning?
Look, first of all, the main idea that one wants to leave is that pot of wealth that you want to leave, you want to leave as high as possible. It's not to say that it is in the value of rands or dollars or pounds. It can potentially mean that you can actually set up an educational trust for someone. So if you've got grandchildren, you can set up an educational trust very early on for a specific person. Unfortunately, we also live in a world where sometimes life is tough, and we have clients that out of nowhere have cancer, or there's a special need. So a special need trust can also then be created down the line. So it's not just the formation of a trust for the sake of creating a trust. The other important part that we've also seen over time is that a lot of our clients are externalizing money. They are investing, in the US, they're buying properties in Europe, etc., etc. And that's where a trust becomes a very strong vehicle where that asset can be held. If I, for example, have a holiday home, and just to come back to your point a little bit earlier, if the liquidity is not there to transfer the asset or to pay the taxes, all of that, in many cases we have family homes and family holiday homes that's been in multi-generational cycles, if I can call it that way. If there's not enough liquidity, you have to sell the asset.
Sure.
So it really comes down to a trust can be a very strong tool. I won't just go and set up the trust for the sake of setting up a trust. But again, an advisor seeks the advice of a fiduciary expert. And in many cases, fiduciary experts will also understand the specific structure that needs to be set up, how it is drafted, to ensure that it doesn't, in a certain way, also counteract what your will is doing. So these two actually need to talk to each other then as well.
And a lot of people are thinking that estate planning is also, you do it once and then it's done. How often should we be reviewing? I know you said probably more often than we do, but what is a healthy cadence in terms of checking these things?
Within our own business, we do ask we actually force our advisors to see our clients once a year. In actual fact, it's prescribed by law. We have to see our clients once a year. But I would say to check in on your estate and your will at least every 2 to 3 years. And it's not just to update, but do understand that there are certain things that will force the updating of a will. Life-changing event. Many times people think a life-changing event is I got married or divorced. I'll come back to the divorce part just now. But it is, we are a bank. In many cases, people do need loans. So if I've just bought a home, that's the first trigger, my will needs to be updated. Not because of the sake that I own a property now, there is a potential loan. What happens if I do not have enough provision to settle the loan? If I do not have it, the bank's going to call on the loan, which means ultimately you potentially are sitting with a scenario where the property has to be sold to settle the debt. That's the one thing. The second thing is we're also going through an environment where legislation changes constantly. So that's why we ask our advisors to speak to their clients at least once a year, have a discussion around specific implications around the tax law, estate planning, etc., etc. I mentioned a little bit earlier around divorce. You have, after being granted a divorce paper or piece of paper, if I want to call it that way, you have 3 months to update your will. If you do not update your will and you believe, I want to leave my estate to my new wife, and you pass away after 3 months and you haven't changed your will, that will is still valid.
Wow.
Which means whatever your assets are will go to your ex-spouse. So that's why we say a life-changing event such as a divorce can be a very important point, and that's why we seek the preference that we see our clients and have that discussion at least once a year.
And when it comes to specifically Nedbank working with clients to create estate plans that really fit their personal and financial and business goals, how does that work? What are the specifics that the values that you focus on?
Look, our first point of call in many cases is our bankers. So we spend a huge amount of time with the bankers. In actual fact, Nedbank's got what we call a behavioral finance or behavioral economics division. And in many cases, we seek their advice on how clients will react to us saying to them once a year, you need to update your will. You need to understand the implications of buying a new car, of having a loan, etc., etc. So that's our first starting point. It's not to sell, but it's to identify what are the trigger points where there's a concern from the banker that advice needs to be sought. So it's not just your will or a trust. It is, you've got a financial position. You might have a specific account which is not suitable for an individual or for a business. So that's the first point. We then also spend a huge amount of time where we align our bankers to advisors. And it's a decision that we took around about June of last year, where we've segmented our financial advisors to the segments of the bank. Now, what do I mean by that? So private clients, you might have a specific need. Medical banking, you're dealing with a totally different professional. So you also need to have an advisor which understands medical practices. We've done the same in agriculture. Nedbank's also a very big lender into the franchise business. So we've done exactly the same. And we've done the same into commercial. So the expertise that we need to have needs to align specifically then to the segment. What's also very important, ongoing training for our financial advisors. We need to understand what are the changes. Although we are tied to Nedbank as a bank, we are also an independent financial advisory business. The independence mean we are not only offering Nedbank products. We have contracts with some of the biggest life insurance companies. We've got contracts with some of the biggest investment practices and asset managers in South Africa. So the advice process that we have with our client is led by advice. We call it holistic advice, and there's a whole process that we go through. So it's not just knocking on the door and specifically then pushing the product through to the client. And two other critically important points that we've also introduced into the business. We've got something called a large case forum. That forum meets twice a week. So if there's a specific case that comes through which is outside of the norm, there's a whole panel. I think we're about 23 people that sit on that panel. And that case is then presented to this panel. A whole lot of discussions are coming through on that. Have you looked at this? Why have you only got 2 company quotes? Why not 3? Why are you specifically going with this company, not with this company? Because the benefits are more suited to medical banking, for example, or to a private client than commercial. So that's one element that we do. And the last point is that we actually take a lot of case studies. So a specific case will happen. That is then shared amongst the financial advisors, where they actually have the talking points to say, we've just come up with this specific case, this was a specific need from this client, this is how we addressed it, this is how our experts seeked it, and where we felt we needed an opinion outside of Nedbank, we might have sought the advice of a legal firm. Wow. So in many cases we do seek that, And the third point is those case studies we are then publishing into newsletters into the various segments of the bank. So the bankers, when they get a weekly newsletter from the head of the business, there will be a specific section where we are saying, you know, we've specifically had this case, look out for it. These are the kind of trigger points. This is the discussion points that you specifically can have then with your client.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I hope that this discussion has inspired you to consider the practical steps you can take to either start or begin to review your estate planning. If you'd want to know more, please contact one of the Nedbank financial advisors or go to nedbank.co.za.